Hey guys, and welcome back to ScarletSprites. Back today to talk about another arcade game that is being rumored to be an Arcade1Up. I want to give full credit to Michael B, the Game Genie, for alerting me to this. I watched his video and saw his post on Twitter about this. I know we had that SNK Neo Geo cabinet that was rumored about a year and a half ago that never came to fruition. So I don't know if this is another thing like that or not. So at this point in time, I don't know that we know that this is confirmed. I think this is still a leak, still a rumor. That doesn't really interest me all that much. I'm probably not going to be the buyer for this machine, even if it is real. We'll get to that in a second. But the interesting thing about the mock-up to me are the hoses that run to the guns. That seems to indicate that they could dismount, or they come up off of the control panel and you can kind of hold them and swing them around, and they function almost like a light gun. And Terminator 2 is not a light gun game, so that's very interesting. That's a departure from how the original game was played. I think a lot of people don't realize that the original arcade game is not a light gun game. Those guns are fixed and mounted to the control panel. So there's two potentiometers inside of those guns that give a reading. So when you swing the gun left to right, the little dial on the potentiometer spins this way, and it gives an X-axis reading to the game and tells you where the cursor should be on screen. Likewise, when you're pointing the gun up and down, north and south, there is another potentiometer that spins and gives the game a Y-axis reading. So your cursor on screen is a combination of the readings from these two potentiometers. These are not light guns. In fact, the front of the gun is completely solid if you look down the barrel. So that's interesting to me, because if this game ships with those hoses, and these are in fact more of a light gun, or something like the Wii U or Wii where you have the sensor bar, it changes the gameplay. It's a departure from the original. It could be good, it could be bad. I don't know that we know that until we actually play this. Now, if you've played Terminator Salvation, maybe that gives you a little bit of a hint into how this might play. I don't know. I struggle to say that it would be better, because what does that really mean? It's a departure from the original. I'm a stickler for that. Anytime I hear that something is better than Arcade Perfect, I cringe just a little bit, because what does that really mean? The original is the original. That's the way I want it. I don't want it improved upon. I'm thinking even Virtua Fighter Remix back in the day when Sega tried to improve on their own Virtua Fighter, and they threw some texture maps on those polygons. And I'll be honest, I have a cartridge for Virtua Fighter Remix, and I have the original Virtua Fighter, and I play the original Virtua Fighter all the time. I like the way that looks. It's a moment in time. I don't like the way they tried to dress it up. It looks ugly. Virtua Fighter 2 would eventually come out. It was the final transition of all that, and looks phenomenal, and that's the way that game was originally presented. I hate Virtua Fighter Remix in the way that looks. Virtua Racing would be another one more recently on the Switch. It looks fantastic. I loved it when I had a Switch and I would play it, but it's not the same as the original. This kind of reminds me of something similar. I think it'll be a fun experience if in fact this is real and you're playing with the light guns and swinging those things around. Could be a really great time. I don't know if I want that. I want the mounted guns. We talked on the last video a little bit about Arcade1Up and emulation, and then real hardware. This actually is a game that I own the original hardware for. I do have a Terminator 2 PCB, and in fact I have the entire cabinet for this. This one is not in great shape. It's due for some rehab. You can see in the back here I'm missing a chunk of the one side. That certainly can be repaired, and eventually I'll redo these sides with new artwork as well and kind of clean up some of this fading that's going on here. The other interesting thing some people were already asking about the Arcade1Up was they were wondering if it would have this flash effect for damage when you got hit. On the original arcade, there is this 45-degree angled piece of glass inside the machine, and there's a light fixture to it, and when you get shot in the game, it flashes. It kind of makes like a PAL symbol from an old comic book, but I don't know if that'd be incorporated into the Arcade1Up or not. It seems like it's feasible. Maybe it's an on-screen effect as opposed to a piece of glass. Too early to tell. We don't even know if this is confirmed. So overall, this is a really cool machine. It's one of the greatest movie sequels of the 90s, if not all time, and a game that I really wanted to have in my arcade collection. I think a lot of people enjoyed playing this back in the day. This was a true quarter muncher. I mean, there's at least a little bit of strategy to this one. I know Revolution X came out after this, and I don't even think you had to reload on Revolution X. You could just hold that trigger in and go all over. This at least had, like, the gun would overheat, and you know, your fire rate would slow down a little bit if you didn't hit the right power-ups in the game. And so there's a little bit of a better gameplay to this than I would say Revolution X, but definitely something that is not overly deep. There's no doubt in my mind that there is a market for this. People love this game back in the day. It's tied to an iconic movie franchise, similar to the Konami games we just talked about, the multiplayer experience and pairing up with a buddy to basically go through somewhat of a off-script version of the Terminator 2 movie, and ripping through that with a buddy was a hell of a lot of fun. So speaking of departure from original gameplay, what would this segment be without talking a little bit about playing this on MAME? I'll go ahead here and show you where I download my MAME ROMs from. And remember, you want the version of the ROMs to match the version of MAME that you're running. In my case, it's .233. So once you get this up and running, I'll press tab here. You can see how I have my controls set for play on a PC in my office. And talk about departure from gameplay, I am using a mouse to play this. So this is a completely different experience from using a gun mounted to a control panel or swinging a light gun around attached to a hose. This is straight up just using a mouse. But it can still be a lot of fun if it's the only way you have to play the game. Certainly a nice trip down memory lane regardless. So ultimately, I gotta ask here, how many people will be running out to pick up the Arcade1Up version of Terminator 2? It looks like it's listing at $850 on this site, which by today's exchange rate translates to $675 or $676, I think, American dollars. So again, basically $700, same as the Konami cab that we just talked about. That's a pretty big chunk of change. I'd like to say Revolution X would be another game, since that's also Midway and the follow-up to this. I'd like to say that that game would be in this cabinet, but from a licensing perspective, getting Aerosmith signed on and then layering Terminator 2 on top of that from Fox, I just don't see that happening. They'll probably have something else, I would think, in this if it comes to fruition, but yeah, the licensing costs for these seem to be being passed on to you, the consumer, and you know, if you're willing to pay that, maybe that's fine. I don't know. But let me know in the comments if this is something that interests you. Have you played this on MAME with the mouse for just a little trip down memory lane? Or are you interested in getting a full-sized arcade cabinet? I don't know that I'd recommend this one for beginners. There's a lot going on here with some of the guns and doing some of the repairs to the potentiometers, as well as the recoil function on the guns. There's kind of a lot. So it's not a good first cabinet for anybody that's thinking that, unless you find it already working or you're buying it refurb from somebody, which is going to cost you a lot of money. But anyways, let me know in the comments what you think of Terminator 2, if you'll be picking this up one way or another, Arcade1Up, original PCB, or just playing it on MAME. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later, guys.